I never thought I'd find myself in a position where I'd be writing something like this, but life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. My name is Jake, and I'm a 34-year-old software developer. My wife, Sarah, is 32, and we've been married for 6 years. We were that couple friends and family often told us we were perfect for each other. We had a beautiful home, shared the same interests, and yes, we even had a dog named Max who was pretty much our child. But beneath the surface of our happy marriage, there was trouble brewing, and it all came to a head at my last birthday party. It started with small signs, things I brushed off as typical relationship quirks. Sarah began working late more often, citing deadlines at her job as a graphic designer. I would wait up for her, only for her to come home exhausted and distant. The spark we once had felt dimmer, suffocated by the weight of unspoken words. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself that it was just a rough patch. We all go through those, right? So there I was, excited for my birthday celebration. I planned a small gathering with close friends at our house, nothing extravagant. I thought it would be a great way to bring some joy back into our lives. I had even hired a small catering service because, well, cooking was not my strong suit. Sarah seemed indifferent about the whole thing, which made me uneasy, but I chalked it up to her hectic work schedule. What I didn't anticipate was how that night would change everything. The party started off great. Friends were mingling, laughter filled the air, and I was genuinely enjoying myself. But then I noticed Sarah flirting with one of my friends, Mark. At first, I thought it was harmless, just playful banter. But as the night went on, it became increasingly obvious. She was leaning into him, laughing a bit too hard at his jokes, and the way she touched his arm made my stomach churn. I tried to brush it off, telling myself maybe I was overreacting, but deep down, I felt a knot in my gut. The evening unfolded, and I found myself feeling more and more like an outsider in my own celebration. I took a moment to step outside for some fresh air. And when I returned, I caught them whispering in the corner of the living room. Sarah's eyes sparkled with mischief, and Mark was grinning like an idiot. That's when it hit me. I was being played for a fool. My birthday party, meant to be a celebration of love and friendship, was turning into an exhibition of betrayal. I decided to confront Sarah the next day. I had to know if my suspicions held any truth. I approached her while we were cleaning up the remnants of the party, my heart racing. "Can we talk?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked up from the mess of empty bottles and plates, her expression shifting to one of annoyance. "Jake, I'm really tired. Can it wait?" "No, it can't wait. I need to know what's going on with you and Mark," I said, my voice firm yet trembling beneath the surface. The atmosphere grew tense and her face flushed with irritation. "What are you talking about?" she snapped, crossing her arms defensively. I felt the anger bubbling inside me. "Don't play dumb, Sarah. I saw how you were with him last night. It's not just flirting. What's going on?" She rolled her eyes, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "You're being ridiculous, Jake. It was just fun. It doesn't mean anything." Her dismissive attitude struck a nerve. Fun? I wanted to scream. That wasn't fun, it was a violation. We went back and forth, her excuses getting increasingly absurd. She claimed I was overreacting because I was jealous. Jealous. I was hurt, betrayed, and angry. I couldn't wrap my head around how she could so casually brush aside my feelings like they meant nothing. With every word she said, I felt the ground beneath me shift, and I was losing my balance. The confrontation ended with her storming off, leaving me alone with a whirlwind of emotions. The image of Sarah flirting with Mark replayed in my mind like a broken record. I felt crushed, angry, and utterly lost. I never expected to find myself in such a situation. My life was spiraling out of control, and I needed to figure out how to regain my footing. As I sat there, staring at the mess we had created, I realized this wasn't just about the infidelity. It was about respect, love, and trust, all of which were now hanging by a thread. The road ahead was going to be rough, but I knew I needed to confront this head-on. I had to make a decision, not just for my marriage but for myself. The days following the confrontation felt like an avalanche of emotions, each one heavier than the last. I remember lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling while the shadows danced around my room. Every creak of the house seemed to echo the betrayal I felt. Every time Sarah walked past me, I'd catch a glimpse of the woman I thought I knew, but now she felt like a stranger. The warmth I once felt for her was being replaced by a cold, bitter resentment. I tried to convince myself to take it easy, to talk things over like rational adults. But the more I thought about what had transpired, the more my mind spiraled. I felt like an amateur detective, piecing together the puzzle of my marriage. Was this affair something that had been brewing for a while? Had there been other signs I conveniently ignored? The late nights at work, the sudden change in her phone habits, always keeping it close, always. On silent, it felt like I had been living in a fog. Then one evening I decided to take matters into my own hands. I needed proof, something tangible to either confirm my worst fears or give me peace of mind. I waited for Sarah to leave for her evening jog, a routine she had taken up recently. It was a perfect opportunity. As soon as she was out the door, I rushed to her phone. I was nervous, my hands shaking as I typed in her password. I had memorized it from when we first got together. As her phone lit up, I felt like I was about to uncover a buried treasure, or more accurately, a buried nightmare. I scrolled through her messages, my heart pounding as I saw the texts between her and Mark. At first, they seemed innocuous, filled with playful banter. But as I dug deeper, the tone shifted dramatically. The messages turned flirty, with Sarah sending emojis and inside jokes that I had never been a part of. I felt a pit form in my stomach as I found a thread that was far too intimate. Messages about meeting up when I was away, and one that made my blood run cold. Can't wait to be alone with you again. My heart sank. Confirmation hit me like a freight train. I couldn't believe I had been so blind. I felt betrayed not just by her actions but by the trust I had placed in her. I had a decision to make, but first I needed to confront her again. This time I wasn't going in empty-handed. I had evidence. When she returned, I was sitting on the couch, my heart racing as I prepared for another confrontation. She looked surprised to see me waiting, her expression shifting to one of indignation. "What now?" she asked, annoyance lacing her voice. "Tell me about Mark," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What about him? I told you there's nothing going on," she replied, but the panic in her eyes betrayed her. I pulled out my phone and showed her the messages. Her face blanched, and for a moment a look of realization washed over her. "Jake, wait, that's not what it looks like," she exclaimed, her voice rising in pitch. "Oh, really? Then what is it? What do you call these?" I couldn't keep the anger out of my voice. "You said it was just fun, but this looks way beyond that." Her excuses tumbled out in a desperate flurry. "I was just being playful. You know how I get when I'm around friends. It didn't mean anything." But the pleading tone didn't match the weight of what I had seen. "Didn't mean anything. Sarah, this isn't just flirting. This is you making plans to be with him when I'm not around. You're betraying our marriage." I felt the hurt bubbling over, and I realized I was done with her lies. She looked cornered, and for a moment I thought she might actually confess. But instead she turned the tables, her voice tinged with bitterness. "You're just jealous, Jake. You've always been insecure. Maybe if you paid more attention to me, I wouldn't need to look elsewhere." Her words struck me like a slap in the face. I couldn't believe she was blaming me for her infidelity. "So this is my fault?" I shot back, incredulity lacing my voice. "You chose to cheat, Sarah. You could have talked to me. You could have come to me with your problems, but you didn't. You went behind my back." The argument escalated, each of us hurling accusations and hurtful words. I felt like I was in a twisted version of a relationship I once cherished. I was angry not just for what she had done, but for the way she was twisting the narrative to make me the villain. After what felt like hours of shouting, I stormed out of the house, needing air, needing space. I drove to a nearby park, my mind racing. I was furious, heartbroken, and confused all at once. How had we reached this point? Where was the love we once had? More importantly, what was I going to do next? As I sat there in the dim light of the park, surrounded by the stillness of the night, I realized I couldn't go back to the way things were. I had to decide whether I was going to fight for my marriage or fight for my own peace of mind. The road stretched ahead of me, and I knew it wouldn't be an easy journey. But one thing was clear. I couldn't allow my life to be dictated by someone who showed so little regard for my feelings. It was time to take control. After that heated confrontation with Sarah, My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. I spent the night driving around aimlessly, trying to escape the suffocating reality of what was happening in my life. Every street I passed felt like a reminder of the love I once felt and the betrayal that now stained it. I drove to the park where I had spent so many evenings with Sarah, laughing and sharing dreams. Now it felt like a graveyard of memories. The following days were a blur. Sarah and I had settled into this tense silence, both avoiding the elephant in the room. I could sense her unease whenever we were together. She'd glance at me, her expression a mix of guilt and defiance. It was as if she was waiting for me to make the next move, and frankly, I had no idea what that would be. My emotional turmoil was exhausting, and I felt like I was stuck in an endless loop of betrayal and anger. I decided to confide in my best friend, Mike. He had been my confidant through many ups and downs, relationship woes, job struggles, the usual life stuff. When I broke the news about Sarah's affair, I could see the disbelief wash over his face. He leaned back in his chair, his brows knitted together. "Dude, I can't believe this. Are you sure? I mean, Sarah seemed so into you at your party. What the hell happened?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the messages I had found. His expression shifted from disbelief to anger as he read through the exchanges. "Wow, this is messed up, man. You deserve better than this. What's your plan?" That question hung in the air, heavy with expectation. I had been pondering it since I found out Sarah was cheating. I don't know, honestly. Part of me wants to confront her again to make her see how wrong this is, but another part of me wonders if it's even worth it. I feel like I'm fighting for someone who doesn't care about me. Mike nodded thoughtfully. "You need to think about what you want, Jake. If she's willing to disrespect you like this, do you really want to stay married to her? It's been 6 years. Do you want to throw it all away or try to salvage it?" I let his words sink in, and I realized that I had a choice to make. I could let her continue to manipulate the narrative or stand up for myself and demand the respect I deserved. I decided then and there that I had to confront her again, but this time with a different approach. I wanted to gather my thoughts, lay everything out clearly, and confront her without the chaos of emotions clouding my judgment. The next evening, I called Sarah into the living room. I had spent the day organizing my thoughts and practicing what I wanted to say. I wanted clarity and honesty, not just for her but for myself too. When she came in, I could see that she was anxious. Her body language screamed apprehension, and I knew she sensed the seriousness of the moment. "Sarah," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "I want to talk about what's been happening. I need you to be honest with me. No more excuses, just the truth." She crossed her arms defensively, her eyes narrowing. "I told you already, Jake. It was just fun, it did. Mean anything? Doesn't mean anything. You and Mark have been planning to meet up. How is that just fun?" I felt the anger bubbling up again but forced myself to calm down. "This isn't about whether it was fun or not. This is about trust and respect in our marriage. You've broken both." Her face went pale and she opened her mouth to respond but then hesitated. It was the first time I'd seen her at a loss for words. I pressed on. "I want to know why you felt the need to do this. What was missing in our marriage that made you feel like you had to cheat?" She looked away, biting her lip. I don't know. I thought it was just harmless fun. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did hurt me, Sarah. You really did. And now I'm questioning everything. I need you to take responsibility for this." I paused, letting my words sink in. "I need to know if you want to fight for our marriage or if you want to keep doing this." The silence that followed felt suffocating. I watched her face as she processed what I had said. Finally, she spoke, but her voice was shaky. "I don't want to lose you, Jake, but I don't know how to fix this. I'm scared." Her vulnerability momentarily softened my heart, but I quickly reminded myself of the betrayal that lay beneath her fear. "You need to understand that trust is something that takes time to rebuild, but I need a real commitment from you. No more flirting, no more secrets. I need you to be transparent with me from now on." "I can do that," she said, looking more earnest. "I'll end things with Mark. I promise I'll make it right." I nodded, feeling a flicker of hope. "It's going to take time, Sarah. We need to start with honesty." But as I spoke those words, I couldn't shake the feeling that there were still many unresolved issues between us. I knew deep down that just saying, "I'll make it right," wouldn't magically fix everything. I needed to know if she was willing to truly fight for our marriage, or if this was just another temporary fix to her conscience. As I sat across from her, watching her process what I'd said, I felt a glimmer of hope, but the road ahead was still fraught with uncertainty. I realized that rebuilding our marriage would require more than just promises. It would take time, effort, and most importantly, trust. It was a long journey, and I wasn't sure if we could make it together. But one thing was clear: I needed to protect my heart while navigating this fragile territory. After our long conversation, I felt a mix of relief and uncertainty. I knew that Sarah had promised to end things with Mark, but deep down, I wasn't sure if I could believe her. Trust, once shattered, is hard to rebuild, and I knew I would have to be vigilant. The weeks that followed felt like a roller coaster of emotions. Some days I felt hopeful, and other days I was engulfed by doubt. To try and rebuild some semblance of normalcy, I suggested couples therapy. I figured it was an opportunity for us to explore our feelings under professional guidance. At first, Sarah hesitated, claiming that it wasn't necessary, but I stood firm. We need help figuring out what went wrong, and I don't want to do this alone, I told her. Eventually, she agreed, and we set up an appointment with a therapist who specialized in infidelity. The first session was awkward. We sat across from the therapist, Dr. Miller, who had a calm demeanor. She asked us to share our feelings and thoughts about what had happened. I spoke honestly about my hurt and betrayal, how it felt like the foundation of our relationship had crumbled. Sarah echoed my sentiments, but her explanations felt rehearsed, lacking the depth I needed to truly believe she understood the gravity of her actions. As weeks turned into months, we continued our sessions. Each time I tried to be open and honest, but Sarah's lack of accountability often frustrated me. I wanted her to dig deeper, to explore why she felt the need to cheat. Instead, she often deflected, shifting the blame back to me or our circumstances. I began to realize that her understanding of our issues was still superficial. One evening, after a particularly heated therapy session where we didn't make much progress, I went out for a drink with Mike. I needed to vent, to share my frustrations with someone who understood. Over a couple of beers, I unloaded everything: the therapy sessions, my doubts about Sarah's sincerity, and the way our connection still felt strained. "Dude, you've been so patient with her," Mike said as he leaned back in his chair. "But you can't keep waiting for her to figure it all out. You need to look out for yourself too. If she's not ready to take real responsibility, you might need to consider what that means for you." His words resonated with me. I've been so focused on Sarah's healing that I had neglected to protect my own heart. The thought of living like this indefinitely filled me with dread. I realized I had to set boundaries and make it clear that I wouldn't allow Sarah's indecisiveness to dictate my happiness. A few days later, I sat Sarah down after work. "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my tone calm, but I could feel the tension in the air. "I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, and I need to set some boundaries for myself." She looked at me, her brow furrowing in confusion. "What do you mean? I can't keep going to therapy and watching you deflect." "Responsibility. I need to know that you're genuinely committed to fixing this, or I can't keep putting my heart on the line." "Jake, I'm trying. It's hard to face everything I've done," she protested, her voice tinged with frustration. "I understand it's hard," I replied, my heart racing. "But you need to start taking accountability. If you really want to be with me, you have to show that through your actions. And if you can't do that, we need to rethink our relationship." Her eyes widened, and for a moment I could see the fear in her expression. "Are you saying you want to leave me?" "I'm saying I can't keep investing in this marriage if you're not ready to take the necessary steps to repair it. I love you, but I can't be the only one fighting for us." Silence hung heavy in the air as she processed my words. I watched as her expression shifted, a mix of realization and fear. "I don't want to lose you, Jake. I'll try harder, I promise," she said, her voice trembling. "Trying isn't enough anymore, Sarah. I need to see real change. You need be honest about your feelings, and if you're struggling, talk to me instead of pushing me away." The conversation ended with a flicker of hope, but in the back of my mind I couldn't shake the feeling that we were still on shaky ground. I began to implement my boundaries, setting specific times for therapy, carving out moments for honest conversations, and even taking time for myself when I felt overwhelmed. The process was exhausting but necessary. In the days that followed, I noticed small changes. Sarah seemed more willing to engage in discussions about our relationship, admitting her struggles and expressing her fears. However, I still couldn't help but wonder if it was genuine or just a knee-jerk reaction to the fear of losing me. One evening, I decided to surprise her with a date night. I wanted to remind her of the good times we had shared. I cooked her favorite meal and set up a cozy dinner in the living room. As we sat together, I tried to focus on the positives, to remind myself of the love we once had. But as the conversation flowed, I couldn't shake the underlying tension. "Jake, this is really nice," she said, her eyes brightening. "I've missed this." I smiled, trying to be optimistic. "Me too. I want us to get back to a place where we can enjoy each other's company again." But just as the atmosphere began to lighten, my phone buzzed on the table. I glanced at it and my heart sank. It was a message from Mark. My stomach twisted and I felt an all too familiar anger rising. I opened the message and my heart raced as I read it. It was casual, seemingly innocent, but it was a reminder of Sarah's betrayal. I felt my resolve shatter. "Jake, is everything okay?" Sarah asked, her voice suddenly tight as she noticed the change in my demeanor. I looked up at her, anger simmering just beneath the surface. "No, it's not okay, Sarah. I just got a message from Mark." Her face went pale and I could almost hear her heart drop. "What does it say?" "It doesn't matter what it says," I snapped, my frustration bubbling over. "It's the fact that he's still in your life that's the problem. I thought you were serious about cutting ties." "I can explain. I haven't talked to him since," she stammered, but I could see the panic in her eyes. "No more excuses." I shot back. "This needs to stop. I need to know that you're fully committed to making this work, and this is not how you do that." The tension between us escalated, and I could feel the walls closing in. The date night I had envisioned as a step forward crumbled before my eyes. I was faced with the reality that, despite her promises, Sarah was still entangled with the very person who had hurt me. In that moment, I realized I had a decision to make. Was I going to continue down this path, hoping for the best, or was it time to reassess my own needs and take the necessary steps to protect my heart? The emotional roller coaster was draining, and I knew I couldn't keep living under this shadow of uncertainty. I took a deep breath, trying to find my words amidst the rising tide of frustration and confusion. "We need to talk about what this means for us, Sarah. I can't keep living like this." As I spoke, I knew that whatever happened next would shape the future of our relationship, one way or another. The uncertainty hung in the air, and I prepared myself for the storm that was about to come. The argument that night felt like an explosion, a culmination of all the tension that had been building between us since Sarah's infidelity was revealed. I watched her face twist with a mixture of fear and defiance as we hurled our grievances back and forth. For every excuse she offered, I shot back with a hard dose of reality. I felt like I was fighting not just for my marriage but for my very sanity. "Jake, I swear, I haven't talked to him since you found out," she shouted, her voice cracking. "I don't want him in my life anymore, but it's not that easy." "Then why is he still messaging you? Why does he still have access to you?" I replied, my voice rising. "If you want to prove that you're serious about us, you have to let go of everything that puts our future at risk." I could see her struggling to find a coherent response. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't plan any of it. I just got caught up in the moment. Can't you understand that?" "No, I can't just overlook this. It's not just a moment. It's an entire betrayal, Sarah." My heart raced as I spoke. The anger was consuming me, but beneath it lay a deep sense of hurt. I wanted to reach her, to make her see how her actions had affected me. The tension in the room thickened, and for a moment I thought we might break down completely. But instead, Sarah took a deep breath and her expression softened, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to lose you, Jake. I love you. You mean everything to me." I felt a flicker of vulnerability in her words, but I couldn't shake the doubt that lingered in my mind. "Then show me, Sarah. Prove it. It's not enough to just say the words. You need to take action, and that starts with cutting Mark out of your life for good." She hesitated, her eyes welling with tears. "I will." I swear I will. I'll text him right now and tell him to stop. Do it, I said firmly, crossing my arms. I need to see that you're committed to this. With trembling hands, she pulled out her phone and opened up the conversation with Mark. My heart raced as she typed her message, and I found myself holding my breath. I watched her face as she hit send, a mixture of relief and fear washing over her. There, she said, her voice shaky. I told him to stop contacting me. I remained silent for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. Part of me wanted to believe her, but another part was still skeptical. Words are easy, Sarah. I need to see real change, not just a quick fix. She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. I understand. This isn't just about the texts or Mark, it's about us. I want to make this work, but I know I have a lot to prove. I felt a mix of anger and sadness, but also a flicker of hope. I wanted to believe her, but trust was something that would take time to rebuild. I couldn't just erase the past, and it was clear that we still had a long way to go. Over the next few days, I kept my distance from Sarah emotionally. While I appreciated her efforts, I needed to protect myself. I focused more on my work and my friendships, trying to find a balance between hope and skepticism. I spent time with Mike and other friends, leaning on them for support as I navigated this new chapter in my life. One evening, about a week after our heated confrontation, I decided to check in with Sarah. We had been drifting into a routine of avoidance, and I felt it was time to establish some ground rules. I found her in the living room, scrolling through her phone, a look of concentration on her face. "Can we talk?" I asked, trying to keep my tone calm. She looked up, her expression shifting to one of apprehension. "Sure. What's on your mind? I feel like we're still not on the same page." "Just because you texted Mark doesn't mean everything is magically fixed," I said, my voice firm but measured. "We need to make some ground rules moving forward if we're going to rebuild this." She nodded, her brow furrowing. "Okay, I'm listening. First, I need you to be transparent about your communication. I want to know if anyone contacts you, be it Mark or anyone else. I want to be involved in the conversations, and I need to see that you're fully committed to rebuilding our trust." "Fine," she replied, her voice steady. "I can do that. Second, I think we should set some boundaries when it comes to our social circles. I don't want to see Mark at any gatherings for the foreseeable future. I need to be able to trust that we're not in situations where temptation could arise." Her eyes widened slightly, but she nodded again. "I understand. I'll talk to my friends about it. I don't want to put you in a position where you feel uncomfortable. Lastly," I continued, "we need to be open with each other about our feelings. If you ever feel the urge to withdraw or feel unhappy, I want you to talk to me. I can't promise I won't react, but I want to work through it together." She took a deep breath, and I could see the gears turning in her mind. "I can agree to that. I want to be better for you, Jake. I'm willing to put in the effort." I felt a slight glimmer of hope, but I knew it would take time to see if she truly meant it. I had set my boundaries, and it was up to her to adhere to them. As we sat there discussing our future, I realized that, while I had made progress in establishing my needs, the road ahead would still be full of challenges. I had chosen to fight for our marriage, but I was also acutely aware that trust is fragile. I couldn't ignore the nagging voice in my head that questioned whether this commitment was enough to heal our wounds. In the days that followed, we both made an effort to communicate more openly. There were moments of laughter and connection, but underlying it all was the weight of our history. I still found myself checking my phone at times, half expecting to see a message from Mark, even though Sarah assured me he wouldn't contact her again. But as I began to feel a bit lighter, like the burden of uncertainty was slowly being lifted, an email popped up on my computer screen from my work. It was a routine check-in about a project I was assigned to, but the second line stopped me in my tracks. "We're looking forward to your presentation next week, and also, I hope everything is well with Sarah. I heard she's been hanging out with Mark again. Just thought I'd mention it." The breath caught in my throat, and I felt my heart sink. Was she really trying to rebuild our marriage, or was this all a facade? I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal all over again, and my resolve began to crumble as anger surged back. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I slammed my laptop shut, my mind racing. I couldn't take any more of this. It was time to confront Sarah with the truth. The moment I received that email, my mind spiraled out of control. I felt my heart racing, anger coursing through my veins. I couldn't believe that after everything we had been through, Sarah was still in contact with Mark. The words on the screen blurred as my emotions took over. I had fought so hard to rebuild our marriage, and yet here I was confronted with the reality that she might not be as committed as she claimed. I stormed into the living room where Sarah was sitting, her attention focused on her phone. "We need to talk," I said, my voice sharp and filled with urgency. She looked up, surprise flashing across her face. "What's wrong?" I didn't mince words. "I just got an email from work and it mentions that you've been hanging out with Mark again." Her expression shifted, and for a moment she looked vulnerable. "Jake, I swear I haven't seen him. I told you I was done with him." "Then why would someone from my work say otherwise? This isn't the first time I've heard your name linked with his, Sarah." My voice cracked with the weight of betrayal. "I thought we were working on this together. I thought you were committed." "I am committed," she insisted, her voice escalating. "You have to believe me. Maybe they saw our old texts or something. I haven't talked to him since the last time we discussed it." I shook my head, frustration boiling over. "That's not good enough. You need to realize how serious this is. You say you love me, but every time I turn around, it feels like you're still tied to him. I can't keep doing this if you're not fully invested in our marriage." Tears welled up in her eyes, and I could see the conflict within her. "I'm trying, I'm really trying," she pleaded, but her words felt hollow. I was overwhelmed with a sense of betrayal that made it hard to see beyond my anger. "You need to cut him out of your life completely," I demanded, my voice firm. "If you have any hope of saving our marriage, it has to start there. I can't be the only one fighting for us. You need to show me you're serious, and that means being honest and transparent." She nodded, and I could see her fighting against the tears. "You're right. I'll text him right now and tell him to leave me alone. I don't want to lose you." At that moment, I felt a mixture of hope and skepticism. I wanted to believe her, but the damage had been done. I needed more than just promises. I needed action. "I want to see that message," I said, crossing my arms. With trembling hands, Sarah opened her phone and began typing. I watched as she crafted the message, each word feeling like a small step toward regaining my trust. After hitting send, she turned to me, her eyes pleading for reassurance. "I meant it, Jake. I want to make this work." I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. "I want that too, but it's going to take time for me to feel secure again. You need to understand that. It's not just about the texts, it's about building back the trust we lost." She nodded, her face reflecting a mix of determination and fear. "I understand. I'll do whatever it takes." Over the following weeks, we both made an effort to rebuild our relationship. Sarah followed through on her promise to cut ties with Mark, and I could see her trying to be more transparent. She shared her feelings more openly, and we began to have deeper conversations about our relationship. It wasn't easy. There were moments filled with frustration and doubt, but I was cautiously optimistic. I also made a conscious effort to focus on my own healing. I continued to attend therapy sessions, both individually and with Sarah, and I began to rediscover parts of myself that had been buried beneath the pain of betrayal. I reconnected with friends, focused on my hobbies, and even took some time to just breathe. It was important for me to reclaim my identity outside of our marriage, and I felt stronger for it. However, the shadows of doubt still lingered. I found myself glancing at my phone, half expecting another message from Mark or some sign that things weren't as they seemed. I knew I had to learn to trust again, but it was a slow process. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, Sarah looked at me with a mix of vulnerability and determination. "Jake, I know I messed up. I don't want you to feel like you have to keep waiting for me to prove myself. I want to be better for you." I felt a warmth in her words, but was also reminded of the walls I had put up for my own protection. "It's going to take time, Sarah. I want us to be okay, but I need to feel secure in what we're building together." "I understand," she replied softly. "I'll keep working at it, and if you ever feel like I'm slipping, just tell me. I want us to have a future, and I'll do everything I can to make it happen." As the weeks turned into months, I began to see small changes within ourselves and our relationship. We started to communicate more effectively, sharing our feelings and addressing concerns before they became issues. It wasn't perfect, and there were still moments of tension, but I could see Sarah's commitment shining through her actions. In reflections, I learned that healing from betrayal isn't linear. It's messy, complicated, and requires patience from both partners. I understood that love could endure even the darkest of storms, but it requires work, accountability, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. Though the scars of the past would always be there, I felt a renewed sense of hope. I was learning to trust again, and that process, while difficult, was allowing us to build a stronger foundation for our future. I knew that the journey ahead would still have its challenges, but I was ready to face them. With Sarah by my side, if she was willing to keep fighting for us too. And as we held each other that night, I realized that love might be complicated, but it was worth the fight.